Good day, everyone. My name is Rich Chester, and I'm the Director of Business Intelligence for LPA Software Solutions. It's my pleasure to be with you today. We're going to talk about what's new in the IBM Cognos Analytics Release 11.0.7, otherwise known as Release 7. Our agenda today is going to begin with talking about how the home page and navigation have changed. There have been significant updates to the navigation and the look of the home page in Release 7, especially as compared to releases 0 through 6. So we'll go through those. Then I'll talk about the enhancements to the world of dashboards and stories, the changes to the world of reporting. We'll move on to enhancements in the data modules area. Then a whole list of other enhancements that don't fall into any of those areas. And as I go, I'm going to do as many demonstrations as I can to show you these changes and give you a good feel for them. At the end of our hour together, I will take as many questions as I can and provide as many answers as I have. So do please submit your questions as we go via the WebEx chat feature. The team that works with me on these webinars will gather them for me and will give me a sheet of them toward the end. I'll answer as many as I can while we're on the air together. Any that I don't get to while we're on the air, I will answer via email after the webinar is over. All of our webinars are recorded and are posted to our website. Today's will be no exception. Out there right now is our introduction to what's new in versions 6, 5, 4 of Cognos Analytics, and so on. A couple of deep dives. We have an introduction to data modules and an introduction to dashboards out there. We have some industry-focused webinars on analytics and manufacturing and performance management and industrial. Many webinars, various topics, not just limited to Cognos Analytics. We cover things like Watson Analytics, predictive analytics. We talk about information management. Take a look at that library. It's a great resource, free training, if you will. It is available on our website, but also all of our webinars are posted to our YouTube channel. So pick whichever delivery mechanism makes sense for you. I usually like to start these webinars off with just a quick idea of how LPA could help you as you move down your journey toward Cognos Analytics. Probably the most obvious way we could help you would be with your upgrade from Cognos 8 or Cognos 10 to Cognos Analytics. Could be installation and configuration services, could be upgrading your models, whether those are framework models or cube models, could be testing your content and moving your content from 8 or 10 into 11 and ensuring that it continues to work, could be helping you with Go Live, could be any or all of those things. Also, if you're a Series 7 user and you wanted to move from Series 7 to Cognos Analytics, we have an extensive amount of experience doing that. We've delivered literally more than 30 engagements in the past year, specifically designed to help folks move from Cognos 7 Impromptu and Powerplay reports to using Cognos Analytics to replace those reports and get underway with all the installation and the training and the migration and so on. If you have a backlog of reports, perhaps LPA could help you attack that backlog. We have a whole team of folks up in the the Innovation Center in Buffalo, New York, who have been trained specifically in how to very quickly convert reports from other technologies, let's say Oracle or Crystal Reports, to Cognos Analytics. So we have a process, we have a methodology, we have a quality program in place where these folks can very quickly move your existing reports or create brand spanking new reports and knock that backlog of reports that you need to have up and running in Cognos Analytics down for you. Sometimes it's important before you upgrade to know if what you're upgrading from is a best practices environment. Perhaps you have some bottlenecks that you want to be sure to attack before you move into the new environment. Perhaps you're wondering if your framework model has been built with best practices, or if your configuration and tuning settings are set according to best practices, or perhaps you have some questions about load balancing or about the data sources themselves that are behind your Cognos reports. Whatever the components are that you are interested in having us review, we will produce a written report that will help you understand your installation versus a collection of best practices. And that report will not only identify where you are maybe not conformant or you have opportunities, but they'll also give you some ideas as to what the proper remedy would be to address any of those issues. So a health check might be something that you are interested in that LPA could help you with. And then finally, on training services. LPA has invested the time and money to create our own training materials for many topics, including report authoring and active reports and dashboards and data modules. But we also can use and resell the IBM training materials for classroom delivery or for self-paced delivery. So many options in training, not just in Cognos Analytics, but also in financial performance management, TM1, planning analytics, as well as information management and other topics. So any training needs you have in the world of IBM analytics, LPA can probably help you out with. So that's just an idea of how LPA could help you on your analytics journey. Let's jump back into Cognos Analytics Release 7. One final reminder about that chat feature, do please submit your questions via the chat, and I'll answer as many as I can as we get toward the end of the hour. So let's first talk about the home page. From this screenshot, you can see there are a number of differences in the look and feel of Cognos. Some differences in the navigation bar on the left, a collection of tiles and so on in the center. So let's take a quick look at that. First of all, in the upper left of this redesigned home screen is a button called Home. So you can click that button virtually anywhere in the interface. If I'm writing reports, the button is there. If I'm looking at a dashboard, the button is there. If you will, the button is always there for you to very quickly return to whatever you have set as your home. A reminder, home can be set to the welcome screen, which is the default, but you could also set your home to be a particular report or a particular dashboard. But that button is now ubiquitous through the interface. In the center of the interface is a bunch of tiles. The one that's highlighted there in the picture is the tile that represents a report that this user recently modified called Employee Survey. So as you access different objects in the portal, these tiles are automatically created for you. They're active. If you click on them, Cognos will do the default action for it. In case of a report, it will present the report for you. There's also a More button. That's the ellipsis button. From there, you'll get a menu of options of what you can do to the object represented by that tile, usually in the form of run it, edit it, change its properties, that sort of thing. Now, if you're used to Cognos 11, you know that there is a Recent button on the left-hand side, and that hasn't gone away. And these tiles actually overlap with the first few entries in that recent list. On the bottom of this designed interface here, it's sort of covered up a little bit by the menu here. This your files or browse. It's actually drag your files or browse. The upload files functionality that was introduced with Cognos 11 is still here. This is one of the two ways to get at it now, is this drag and drop area. So you drag your spreadsheet, drop it in that box. It will invoke the upload files functionality. You might wonder where the upload files button went on the lower left if you're used to the Cognos 11.0.6 and earlier interface. The upload files functionality is still available, but it's under New now. You click on New and the upload files will appear. You also might wonder what happened to your notifications on the lower left. Those have moved actually to the upper right. So if you look at this screenshot, you see the bell here. This is your notifications area. So the functionality is all still there. It's just moved a little bit. Upload files is under New, or here's that drag and drop area. You could do it by just dragging and dropping, or by clicking the New button and clicking Upload Files, and your notifications are up here in the upper right now. So here's just a recap of that. So this is what it used to look like in 11.06 and before, these four icons on the lower left. The Upload Files is here under New, as is Dashboards and Stories and Reports, just like there was before. Notifications has moved to the bell in the upper right. Navigation has also changed. Now you, again, if you are familiar with 11.0.6 and before, when you navigate My Content or Team Content, what you're used to getting is 3 flyout panels. Panel 1, click a folder, get panel 2, click a folder, get panel 3, click a folder, still get 3 panels. First panel collapses. That whole multi-panel scheme is gone, starting with 11.0.7. Instead, you get one panel as shown here on the screen. This panel will have breadcrumbs across the top, like you're used to from the wide view in the 11.0.6 and before, or what you might be used to from Cognos 8 and 10. It's resizable, which is really, really handy. There's this black mark here in the right-hand side of the panel that you can drag with your mouse to resize. So if your names are rather long, which sometimes they can be, in the narrower panel, you'll see ... in the middle of the name perhaps. Just resize the panel, and then the names will fill out to use the available space, as will the breadcrumbs here at the top. There is an icon here to see your entire path if it doesn't fit in the width that you have. So lots of functionality in here. I can still sort by name or by modified date. I can still filter what I see when I navigate to just reports or just data or just folders. That functionality is still the same. I can click on this plus button here, and that will add a new folder. And this is your sort button. But the 3-panel scheme is gone. The 1-panel that is resizable scheme replaces it. And it really acts and behaves more like Cognos 8 and 10 does, or if you are used it, the wide view of navigation that was part of 11.0.6 and before. I think the best thing about it is I can resize it. Let me just show you that while we're here before I move on. So here is my Cognos 11.0.7 environment. Here is some of my most recently accessed objects. There's my drag and drop. If I go to recent, you'll see that the first several entries in recent are also the first the tiles that I have. If I wanted to run this report, I could just click here, and it will go ahead and run this simple report. See on the upper left, I still have my home button. So I click that. My home is the default home, which is the welcome screen at this time. But as you know, you can set a report or a dashboard to be your home by clicking on the ellipsis and choosing set as home. If I click on new, you'll see there's that upload files, but I also now have the option to drag and drop a file here, or to click browse right from here. So if I go to my documents and I grab a file like my social media file, which I might have already updated or uploaded. So if I did, it'll just tell me it's updating it. If I didn't, it'll actually give me the metadata screen. I just can't remember if I've already uploaded that file into this environment. Nope, haven't uploaded it before. So this functionality is identical to 11.0.6 and before. Upload a file, get the metadata screen, check your metadata, see if it's measures or non-measures, click OK, and it will save the file out in your My folders, your My content. Let me go back to here. So these search, My content, team content, recent hasn't changed. Got the nice drag and drop or browse feature here. If I wish, I can click on upload files, and that will be the same as clicking on browse. Here's where I get at the other objects that I want to create new. If you will, all create new functionality is under the new button now, which is kind of nice. It's all located in one place. Here's my notifications area up here. This is still my personal menu where I can change my preferences and manage my subscriptions and all those good things. This is a new button called My Parameters. I'll cover that in a bit, but this is a clever new way to deal with parameters across multiple reports. We'll get back to that. It's really a super enhancement. So just a quick look at this new redesigned interface. If you're familiar with Watson Analytics, this might be old home week, right? This is very Watson Analytics-esque as far as the layout, and that's on purpose. There's a genuine effort at IBM to conform the interface to for Watson and Cognos Analytics. So back to our slides. Let's jump into a bunch of exciting enhancements to dashboards and stories. If you've read the documentation, you know that the documentation refers to what you build with dashboards and stories as a view. So throughout the slides, you'll see you can do this with a view, that with a view. A view could be either a dashboard or a story. So in stories, they've created a new selection of animated transitions. Basically, it's the effect of objects moving from one position on one scene, and then it moves it, if you will, to a new position on a new scene. So it's another transition. Remember that stories are essentially, in many ways, the same as a dashboard, but the notion with a story is that it animates and you can describe scenes and timings so that you can do a presentation live connected to Cognos Analytics and have it, the tool lead people through the story you want to tell, thus the name. It used to be in previous releases that the data tray icon was available when you were designing and editing your dashboard, as well as when you were viewing and running your dashboard. It has been taken away from the consume view and is only available in the edit mode now. They've added a default sort order for alphabetical data. It's ascending, so previous dashboards and stories, previous views from previous releases, after you upgrade, you actually might find things in a different order because there was no default sort before. So you might have had your data reflected in a particular order, if you will, almost a random order. When you open that same dashboard now, it will default to ascending. So you might notice a change. Used to be when you clicked on an object, it brought up the tooltips. You might have, if you clicked on a value in a chart, it might have given you the option to include or exclude. If it happened to be part of a navigation group, you might have the drill down, the back, and the navigate icons. Now you don't get those when you left click on an object. Left clicking an object just selects it. To get those tips, to get that pop up, you have to right click now on an object to display that pop-up. So you can do that exclude or that keep or that drill down function. I'll show you that in the demo. These things with stars have additional slides that give you details on them that we'll run through. We'll talk about disambiguate, I think is the word. Basically helping Cognos understand what location you mean when you drag an item into a map. There's a lot of cities named Boston, not just Boston, Massachusetts. There are cities named Canada. So if you drag over a country and Canada's listed, it doesn't necessarily know if you mean the city or you mean the country. So you have to usually give multiple location data to really refine the locations you mean. I'll show you how that works in a demo as well. Used to be that if you wanted a navigation path in a dashboard, you had to design that navigation path in a data module and then use the data module to source your dashboard. Not anymore. If I create a dashboard directly from an uploaded spreadsheet, I could add a navigation group right in that dashboard. Now, it doesn't add it to the spreadsheet. If I use that spreadsheet to source a different dashboard, that navigation group won't be there. But within that dashboard, I can use the navigation group that I've defined right there. A bunch of new filtering enhancements, including a new filtering area at the top of the screen here that we can see can also let you filter just a single tab, the tab that's visible, or all tabs. So if you will, a global filter area and a tab-by-tab filter area. This helps free up space. Lots of times on our dashboards, we might drag over a column just to give a list of values that a person can select, which will then change the values in the widgets that are related to it. Now we have this dock at the top. And then finally, advanced calculations. So let's take a quick look at a few of those in more detail. This is the map location refinement, the disambiguation of locations. There, I said it. The notion is that in 11.0.6, they introduced this idea that you might need two location values to help plot exactly what it is you meant to plot. And then experience has shown that two is not always enough. So now you can put as many as you need. Here in the top of this picture, you see that I am plotting data by city. It turns out my data set, and I'll use this in my demo as well, is cities in Massachusetts. And I'm plotting population. It turns out that my state in my data file is MA, which, as it turns out, is also an alias for another location in the world. So if I wanted to plot by state, MA isn't enough. Throw in country, and that satisfies it. But there's also in the US overlap on these city names. So what I had to do to get truly unambiguous location data plotted on this map, where the map had no question as to exactly what I wanted to plot, was I actually ended up having to layer in all three of these to fully qualify the cities that I wanted to plot. Notice the order: country, state, city. In this case, I am plotting colored by population. Notice you have point size and point color that you could add to these maps as well. So the big change is multiple location information so that I can have unambiguous locations plotted on my maps. As far as creating navigation groups or navigation paths within a dashboard, you just go to the navigation path component. There's now a plus there. When you click the plus, you can, from your data source, drag over the components that you'd like to include in, if you will, a drill path that would be local to this dashboard. Dashboards can come from multiple sources, as you know. Might be two spreadsheets, might be a spreadsheet and a data module, lots of different options there. The one thing you have to realize is I can't take a column from source 1, a column for source 2, a column from source 3, and make them a navigation group. Navigation group contents all have to come from a single data source, even though your dashboard might be sourcing widgets from various sources. As far as the filtering goes, this dock at the top lets you define either filters that go across tabs or filters that are specific to a single tab. Instead of dragging, in this case, retailer type over onto my dashboard main area and having it take up space there, instead I drag retailer type up into, in my case, the all tabs dock. And by doing that, I can click on that and then pick the retailer types I want. When my user is running the dashboard, they'll actually have a chance to change all of those. So this is a way for me to have filters that don't really take up real estate as much as they would if I had all of those columns as little widgets on my dashboard layout. And even the dock can be hidden or shown by a button here. So you can even free up more real estate by hiding this if there's no need to make changes to the selected values up here. Because the data tray is not available when you consume a dashboard anymore, starting with this release, you are not able, while you're viewing a dashboard, to add global data source filters because you did that through the data tray. You can still add them in edit mode, absolutely. It's just that that option is no longer available when you're consuming a dashboard or a story. A bunch of filtering enhancements. The top and bottom filter, they added the ability to filter not just count, but percents. And you can specify any value now. It used to be that top and bottom were limited to just a couple of values. I'd have to check, but it might have been 3 and 5, but it could have been 5 and 10. But regardless of what the numbers were, you could only use those numbers that were there. Now you can just fill in any number you want. You want top 7, you want top 15, you want the top 25%. You can do all of that now in the top or bottom filter. On alphabetic data, you now really have sort of a search for values filtering that you can say contains a string or doesn't equal this string, and it will go through and check the matching items to your filter condition. So you can enter a condition, enter the search values using that condition, and it will check or uncheck the objects based on your condition. You've been able to add calculations to your dashboard data for a while now, but they've always been very, very simple. This plus that, this divided by that. Not access to a function library to really sophisticated expressions. To do that in previous releases, you had to create a data module and then use the data module in your dashboard. But with this release now, when you start creating a calculation, you can switch over from the simple interface to using the expression editor. If you're familiar with data modules, this is the identical expression editor that is used in data modules, which means you get access to multi-step functions, this times this divided by that with parentheses and so on. You also get access to the function library, just like you have in data modules. Remember to start entering a function, enter the first letter of the function. Cognos will present all the functions that begin with that first letter. Keep typing, it refines that list, or just pick the function you want from the list. So you can now do advanced calculations in a view. So let's take a look at some of those changes. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new dashboard. So I'll go here to my new button. I'll choose dashboard. I'm going to source this dashboard from an uploaded file. I'll just not worry too much about layout for this demo. I just am going to go ahead and pick my uploaded file from, this is out here in my content, and it's my Massachusetts population example. I'll go ahead and pull that up. So from my data here, there's not a lot of data in this spreadsheet. I'm going to throw state on just to show you an ambiguous mapping. Now that state value in every row is MA for Massachusetts. However, Morocco, as it turns out, uses the same abbreviation, MA. And you notice this little yellow icon here that says that MA, which is the only value that's in my spreadsheet, is ambiguous, because it could match more than one region. So this map needs disambiguation. Another change that you'll find is to move a widget now in a dashboard. There's this move button here. You click it and drag it with the move button. Go ahead and I'm going to expand this so I can get into the focus view and add some additional stuff. Now in the dashboard, you plot. I'm going to plot by city at the end, but I'm going to first just add country to state. And in dashboard, you go biggest location to smallest location. Notice that it immediately figured out, oh, for the country, United States of America, MA means Massachusetts. Here you go. And the yellow, this is ambiguous, identifier went away. If I wanted to plot by city, I would just add city. So in the, you see the order is biggest to smallest. So you see now I'm plotting by city. Plotting what? Interesting question. I haven't put a measure in yet. I'll put location in, and it will now color that region based on values of population. So this is the multiple location values that will help me make a very specific plot for location values that have overlap, right? So enhancement number 1. I'm going to go ahead and point out just a couple of other things in the widget. Let me collapse the widget. I'm going to click on this area, and you see I get, this is the United States of America, Massachusetts, Boston, and the population. In previous releases, if I clicked here, I'd also get a pop-up toolbar. You don't get that unless you right-click. So I've just right-clicked, and you see I get the information plus I get the button. So that's another change. Clicking selects, hovering, right? Well, I guess I have to hover over a value here. Hovering shows you what it's going to select. Clicking gives you values. Not sure why, there it is. And then right-clicking will give you the toolbar. Okay, so a bit different, a little bit to get used to, but you get used to it pretty quickly. I'm going to go ahead and add another source for this dashboard. Let me just move this guy over here. Just to quickly show you some additional enhancements. I'll do that with another data source. Let me go ahead and grab, I clicked the wrong thing. I want to go here and add a data source. Sorry about that. So out here in my my content, I have this CRM data. And this will give you a few more columns to play with. First thing I want to do is I want to create a calculation. What I want to do is I want to have the average opportunity size. So I'm going to take the pipeline divided by the opportunities. So, and I've been able to do this kind of simple calculation for a while. I'll control click my operands, right click create calculation. I can do a division. Now, that would be fine if this is really all I needed, this level of sophistication. But this link is new. That would bring up the expression editor. And I'll show you an example of the functions coming up. So I typed an underscore. There's all the functions that begin with underscore. So here I could build all kinds of calculations, very sophisticated expressions. I'm not limited to the simple expressions that I used to be when I was working in a dashboard. I'm going to cancel that and go back and actually create that average pipeline calculation. And add that. So whether it's with the sophisticated calculation tool or whether it's with the simple one like I just did, it will add it, and now it's usable throughout my dashboard as a measure. I'm going to go ahead and drag product type over here onto my canvas and drop it there. I will throw the average pipeline size on top of that, and that will get me a nice bar chart. Pretty busy. Notice that they're doing a much better job of fitting many labels in versus previous releases. That's another nice change that I've noticed. Again, if I click on a bar, it highlights it, but if I right click on it, I get the pop-up for the toolbar. So all of that good stuff is there. I'm going to go ahead and just click over here on the average pipeline. Actually right click so I get the bar here. So I can just show you this top or bottom. So this is the top count and bottom count that change, and I can do top 10, bottom 10, top 7, bottom 7. So that's all possible from there. I'm going to undo that. I just wanted you to see that. If I actually replaced this value, not the calculated value, but I replaced it with the opportunity pipeline, and I did top or bottom. Interesting. I'm looking for the top or bottom percent option. Let me try product type. I bet you that's my problem. I'm clicking in the wrong space. There you go. So, if you click on the measure, you get top or bottom based on the measure. If you click on the item that you want to count, you can get top percent and bottom percent as well as counts. So there you go. Where you click is important. So just wanted to show that to you. Don't want to spend a lot of time on it because there's so much to show. I just wanted to get a feel for that for you guys. So let's take a look up here at the filter zone, and then we'll move on to some additional enhancements. I'm going to drag the product line up here and drop it up here in the filter zone. And then I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to pick me a couple of product lines and click OK. Okay, so it sort of shows you what you've picked. It shows you there's a total of 2. It applied the filter here, right? But it's not, I don't have to have a zone in here that lists all 5 product lines and take up space down here. Let me switch to consumption mode so you can see it there as well. So here's that hide. So I get back some real estate, show, get back some real estate. I can change it here. I just have to click on it, and then I can change it. Okay, or I can just remove all of them and click OK, and then it's not filtering at all. It'll give me back all of the product types. Okay, so yet another way to filter. Could I still use a widget to show the product lines and use space in the dashboard main area? Of course I could. Will all of my dashboards that use that upgrade successfully to 7 and work the same? Absolutely they will. But now I have a choice of being able to use the filter dock on top of that. Notice in view mode, no data tray. In edit mode, data tray is back. Okay, so that's a bunch of the enhancements that are in the world of dashboards. And notice my home button is right here and usable from anywhere on the interface. All right, some additional enhancements here now in the world of reporting, and there are a bunch in the world of reporting. So the first one is the interactive maps, the maps I just showed you in the dashboard, where you've got the partnership between IBM and Mapbox and Pitney Bowes. Those maps are now available in a report. There's a bunch of new filtering options available in HTML reports, what are known as the interactive filtering options. I'll show you an example of that. And those stars indicate there's some more details coming on some slides. I alluded to my parameters earlier on when I was showing you the interface. I clicked and told you there's a nifty way to work with a global set of parameters in the tool. I will deeper dive into that now. There is a tool baked in while I'm authoring a report called the Interactive Performance Assistant that is really cool. It will show you how many milliseconds it took to render each object on your report page, as well as an overall summary. Very cool. If you've defined navigation groups in your data modules, they are now available to you in your report if you source a report from a data module. Package-based drill-through was not supported in the interactive viewer before this release. It is supported now. A feature that a number of you have asked me about in the past, View Tabular Data will now indeed support all of the data formats. It's not limited to just HTML output like it was in 11.0.6 and before. So this one I know is a big one for a lot of folks, that you can do View Tabular Data. It will run in HTML, and then you click the Run button and you pick the output format you want. And for those of you who have Planning Analytics along with Cognos Analytics, Planning Analytics cubes include text measures. And heretofore, I haven't been able to use those text measures in a crosstab in Cognos. Now I can, and my intersections of my crosstab will actually express text for the very first time in Cognos history, and not just numbers, if you use a text measure from Planning Analytics in your report. So a few quick deep dives. First of all, the interactive maps. The way you add the interactive map to your report is you add a visualization. You use the visualization library. Make sure you are using the new visualizations in the gallery. You drag over the map that's there. The map supports two layers. You can use them simultaneously. You pick the layer up here. It's either regions or points. In the drop-down box, I'm showing the regions here in the screenshot. You can pan, you can zoom, you get tool tips. You can have ambiguous locations just like I showed you in the dashboard world, and you can add multiple location components to disambiguate your locations just like we did in the dashboard. What's interesting is that the order of them is opposite as it was in the dashboard, at least based on my experimentation. So I'm plotting by city, but I'm disambiguating by state and country. In dashboards, it was actually the reverse order, interestingly enough. When you're plotting regions, you color the regions based on a measure. When you're plotting points, you have a couple of other drop zones on top of that. Now, you might remember in previous releases where the maps were introduced in 5 and 6, the maps didn't recognize, if you will, common names for some areas. And that's because the map started out using the very formal names for all of the regions in the world, and it didn't necessarily know the informal names or the common names that we were using or we might have had in our data. There was an interim fix that helped increase Cognos' understanding of these common names, or what Cognos in the documentation would refer to as aliases for these different locations. IBM continues to work on adding a bunch of aliases so that we get fewer and fewer I don't know where this location is kinds of messages. So they're continuing to do that. A bunch of more were introduced in 11.0.7. So continued improvement in aliasing locations, so more and more common names will be recognized for the right location that they were. The notion of an interactive filter, first of all, has introduced yet another button in the upper right. That's this filter button here. You run your report. If you have used interactive filters, and I'm going to differentiate an interactive filter from an expression-based filter. So an expression-based filter would be where you actually typed in the text of the filter in a query in your report. Those are not what I'm talking about in the interactive filter in the report viewer section here. Certainly they still work in reports, certainly they will still impact your output, but when you click on a column and choose Create Custom Filter from the toolbar, or you right-click on a column in the model and you choose Filter for Report, you build a filter in those instances using, if you will, a filter wizard. When you do that, as is shown here, this is a filter wizard on order method. I right-clicked and said Filter for Report. There's an option here called Can Be Changed in the Viewer that you can tick. All of your old reports, by the way, that's unticked because it wasn't there. So the default is unticked for all the upgraded reports, which you're moving into 7. Once you're in 7, though, you can edit these filters and tick this guy. Why would I tick that option? Well, when I run the report, all of the filters where this option is ticked will show up when my user clicks this final button. And they'll be able to see them, which gives them a super context for the report. They can also change them from there so that they can impact the results of the report without having to actually edit the report using the full-on reporting editing interface. They can't add new filters in this area. They can just modify, see and potentially modify the interactive filters that already exist. If you click on a filter, it shows you the objects on the page that are impacted by it. So I'll give you a demo of this. It seems to me like this will be a great way for your end users to have context in the reports that they're running. This My Parameters panel takes a lot of explaining, but I think it's worth it. I'm going to go through it really fast now. By the way, if you want a deeper dive on any of the things I'm showing you, if you say, gee, Rich, I'd like 15 minutes on this or that, enter that in the chat. And I'll use the list of things that people say, hey, I'd like a mini video on this or that. And I'll work on creating some mini videos based on what you guys tell me in the chat that you're interested in, okay? This parameter notion works like this. The administrator has a way to set up a global list of parameters. That way is done through the Manage button under Customization. The global list is managed there. Then the administrator assigns parameters to roles using the, again, the Manage button. In the Accounts area, roles have properties. You go to Customization, the parameters is there. And from that master list, you say, people in this role are going to have access to these parameters. And you might even set a default value by role for those parameters. Now, when a user logs on and a role they belong to has parameters, they'll have this new button in the upper right that opens your parameters doc. Now, report authors also have access to those parameters. When you write a report, you could create new parameters in the report, or you could leverage this master list of parameters. Why would a report author do that? Well, when they use the parameters in their report, and this user runs the report, it'll actually take this user's values and apply them to those filters. I'll show you how this works. I won't go through, we just don't have time to go through the end-to-end on it, but I will show you a report that uses them and how that report was written very quickly. I'll also show you the interactive performance assistant. You turn this on while you're authoring. You go to the Run options. The very last option is Include Performance Details. When you are in preview mode or when you click Run and choose HTML, each object on your page is going to have an execution time entry underneath it automatically. And if you hover over the information, it tells you how many milliseconds it took to render and how many milliseconds it took to query the data that resulted in that object. And at the very bottom of your report is this sort of overall summary And notice it gives you the session ID and the request ID and the total time. Session and request ID, if you're familiar with your audit database, would actually let you tie this data back to the data that's in your audit database if you found the need to. But this is a terrific way for you to understand what components on your report are potential bottlenecks. Maybe your query needs reauthoring or optimizing. So this can be a super help in terms of really optimizing the performance of our reports by knowing which objects are the ones that are causing our reports to slow down. So I'll give you a quick example of this because it's literally as easy as ticking a box and hitting run. Here is the notion of a navigation group being visible under the Data Items tab of a report that is authored from a data module that includes defined navigation groups. You can leverage those navigation groups in your report by clicking on the Navigate button, and you can just jump to whatever level of the navigation group you wish. So let's take a look at a few of those capabilities. And I know I'm going a little bit fast, but we're running out of time, so I hope you'll bear with me. Let me go ahead and create a new report from a data module that represents that same Massachusetts data. So I'm going to go to that data module, right-click, and choose Create Report, which is one of my favorite ways to start a report, is to go to the package or the data module and right-click on it. I'm going to go ahead and add a map just to remind you how to do that. I'll add a visualization. Make sure that your gallery is new visualizations, and this map right here, this guy, is that map that we want. So I'll add him. This is the region layer. I've also got a point layer. You see where I can do size or color with measures. I'm going to stick with regions for this quick demo. Over here, I've got city, state, and country, and population. I'll go ahead and drag population in as my color. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to plot by city. Notice I get a new drop item here. I'm going to disambiguate by state and then by country. I'm going to go ahead and in my run options, I'm going to turn on the performance details. I'll click OK and run in HTML. And what I should get is basically the same map I showed you earlier in dashboard. I should not get any yellow indicator on here that I have ambiguous locations because I have all three layers. So there you go. I'm going to zoom in here and I'm going to pan a little. So this is in the interactive viewer. Of course, all the new reports default to the interactive viewer. Here is my execution time. I'll hover over this and I'll see hop count. If it had to jump around a multi-server install, this is a single server install, so my hop count's always 0, but that will help you understand the movement across your servers. So there's the performance guy, there's a map in a report. Let me go ahead and close that. I'm going to go back home here, and I'm quickly going to run a couple of reports that I set up that show a couple of other things. Let's talk about this interactive filtering item. So under samples, I have a report that uses the interactive filters. So I'll click on that and run it. So here's a report that includes a number of objects here. And I filtered these with interactive filters. I'm going to click now. You see in the show filters here. So I have two filters. There's actually two queries in this report. If I click on this guy, notice these three objects outlined. That's because this filter is part of a query that happens to be used across all three of these objects. This guy is only used on this object. It's a separate query for this object. See that I can remove the filter if I don't want it available to me. You see I can also edit the filter and select different values than the ones that are already selected. Okay. Now notice it does modify the report. This is the interactive viewer. When you change a filter in the interactive viewer, it does act like you're editing the report. in this with a simpler interface than using the full-on reporting editor. I have the choice to abandon these changes or save these changes to my content. So that hasn't changed because you used to be able to add filters in previous releases to the tool. The thing is, though, they're now collected over here. Now, if I quickly edit this report, I'm going to show you the queries. And query 1 includes, and see, this is what makes it an interactive filter, and can be changed in the viewer is why it's available over there for me to edit or delete. You see, if you create a filter this way and you type it in, this is not an interactive filter. This filter will not show up in that list when you click the filter button. Only the ones that you've created by using that filter wizard. Okay, so that's this new interactive filtering option that I talked to you about. Let me show you the parameter notion. So as the administrator, I went out here under customization, and I created a set of parameters. Anyone who's taken a class from me knows I always prefix my parameter names with a lowercase p. That is, of course, optional. That is just my style, my standard. I applied those to a role that I, as the logged in user, happen to be a member of, and as a result, they show up over here. Now, I can go ahead and I can add some values that will get stored with my profile. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll pop in a year. So these are now my values for the parameter. Now, if a report author has written a report that uses those parameters, it's good news because these values will be immediately applied to the report when I run it. Let me show you. I have a report that uses all of those parameters, as it turns out. Let me quickly go home, hit my team content, and this is my global parameter report. So what I did is I just put at the top what values it's using, and what you should note is they're identical to the values that I have. Because when I wrote this report, I used the global parameters. Here are my global parameters that I have access to. These are my values, and I can change my values. And when I change my values, you see it applies my new values to the report. So, I've often told folks when I am training them that you ought to have a standard set of parameters that you use across all reports. And normally you would have to maintain that list on a piece of paper. Now you can maintain it in the tool and actually use them in the tool and have your end users assign their own values. So when they run reports, they are in full control of the values used for those parameters. So let me show you quickly how this report is written. I'm going to go ahead into the editor mode here. Now these are written with expression-based filters. If I go to the query that runs this list, so you see this P retailer type, the way I added it in here was that I went to my list of parameters. Under it, I found global parameters, and I just dragged over from the global parameters the parameter that I wish to use in the expression-based filter. Okay, so I found that that's the easiest way to leverage these global filters is to do it in that fashion. So just wanted you to see how that worked when in terms of how you author that report. All right, there's actually a lot more to talk about and not a lot more time to do it. So I'm just going to move forward. Data modules didn't have a ton of enhancements, but they are faster. The interface has changed. When you get into the interface now, you'll notice that you've got these tabs along the top. The default view is actually to show you the data tray. But you can click up here to get to your diagram, just like you had before, and also the validate. So they've kind of moved some of those things from the bottom to the top. Because they redesigned the interface, it is a much snappier interface in terms of doing things, which is nice to see. When you create a calculation in a data module, you have the option to jump from the simple expression editor to the from the simple expression to the expression editor, which wasn't there before. The whole join screen is different. I'll show you a quick snapshot of that. Those filter conditions apply here, the same ones we talked about in the dashboard. They're here in the data module. Data groups on numeric columns where you would set it to say equal distribution. It used to be a static range of values there. Now it will dynamically adjust to your data if you've done grouping on numeric columns and you've chosen the equal distribution option. So a few changes, a couple of them overlap with dashboards. A couple are worth looking at. The layout with the buttons at the top is shown here, just highlighted there. You can also sort the columns in the grid, which is kind of nice. Also notice that the horizontal toolbar is, the horizontal scroll bar is actually a horizontal scroll bar now. It's not the box approach that used to be there for horizontal scrolling. The join dialog is amazingly different. I'm going to suggest that if you can, you just screen cap this to get a list of all the changes, but joining is still joining. Cardinality, the relationship type, the optimization approach, all the same as 6 and before. But with release 7, this interface is streamlined. I think it's a bit easier to use. There's more helper components in terms of showing you data after the join, as well as showing you your join candidate columns on the left and the right when you click them. I think it's a great improvement. But unless you were expecting it, it's a little jarring when you first see it. When you create a calculation in a data module, you've been always able to use this expression editor. But if you started with the simple calculation approach and you went, oh, fiddle, I wish I had done the full expression editor, you can just click now this new link that will open the full expression editor right there for you. I don't think we have time for demonstrations at this point, because not only is there another bunch of enhancements to list through for you, but I do want to be able to take a couple of questions. So I apologize. But if any of those are things you'd like me to do a single video, a 10 or 15 minute video on, please enter that in the chat so I will do that for you. Powerplay 11 has been introduced in this release. Powerplay Transformer, as well as Powerplay Studio, as well as Powerplay Client. Same as 10.2.2, no enhancements per se. Powerplay reports and report views are now integrated into the portal, which is nice. They don't open in a separate tab when you run them, but when you edit them in Powerplay Studio, that does still launch in its own tab. Now, if you've ever integrated Powerplay Studio 10.2.2 into Cognos Analytics, there's been a series of steps you've had to take. It's not complex, but you got to know the steps. Now, you install Cognos Powerplay Studio 11, you point it to the same content manager as Cognos Analytics, and it immediately integrates all by itself. It cannot run standalone, separate from Cognos Analytics. So Powerplay Studio 11 must be part of a Cognos Analytics 11 instance. Lots of conformance updates. Go take a look at that supported environments page. Planning Analytics is now directly supported as a data server. So a whole bunch of new logging capabilities for troubleshooting that don't require you to edit files and restart the server to implement. OpenID Connect providers continuing to advance. You heard me talk about OpenID Connect in a previous presentation when it was first introduced. When you do a brand new install, not an upgrade of an existing 11, but a brand new install of 11.0.7, the Everyone group will only appear in System Administrator. Roles for the current licenses have been added and are mapped to the license tool under Manage. Obsolete roles and capabilities will be removed, but if you're upgrading from 11.x to 11.0.7, doesn't do any of that. It leaves your capabilities, your roles alone. Multi-tenancy features, they've added back a bunch of things that were in 10.2.2 but hadn't made it into 11. They're back, plus they added a couple of more extra ones, which is great. So there is a list of questions here. I've got a couple of minutes to answer some questions. So let me go ahead and start. Can I define a custom sort when I view team content? Not yet. I had a chance to chat with product management not that long ago, and this came up, and they hear it a lot. They said that this is a commonly requested item, so we should see the ability to create your own custom sort for team content in a future release. Rich, can I search the metadata when I'm writing a report? Not yet, at least not in this release. I think that's a great candidate for the RFE, the Request for Enhancement website. I hear this a lot in the field, but I haven't talked to product management about it in terms of it being on a roadmap. So if I were you, I would go ahead and submit it in the Request for Enhancement tool. Can I upgrade from 11.04 directly? Yes, indeed. So I have done updates myself from release 4, release 5, and release 6 up to release 7 in one step. Works like a dream. The whole design of 11 from 11.0.0 was that you could easily upgrade as the releases came out. So while I haven't done it on release 3 and release 2, I imagine that it would work just fine because it's designed for that. But I've absolutely done it with releases 4, 5, and 6. I've had no issues with the upgrade. Well, I'm getting the high sign. I'm told that I've gone over my allotted time. So all that remains is for me to say thank you very much for spending this hour with me. It's been my pleasure. You see my email address there. You can always reach out to me that way. Questions that you submitted, and I know there's a bunch. Questions you submitted that I haven't gotten to yet, I will absolutely get to after the webinar. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't know the answer, I'll research it. So thank you very much.